Okay, so today we're going to get started in butterfly pose. So butterfly pose, Klaus is already sitting in it. You have the bottoms of your feet together. And then you bring your heels about 2 hands length away from your groin. And if you can't sit up tall, sit on something. Oh no, they're frozen. First thing to do is you're gonna, yay, you're gonna grab onto your shins, lift up your heart, drop your head back, and then with your exhale, just bring your chin down to your chest and start to melt towards your feet. Take a full breath in, and with your exhale, just sigh out through your mouth. So if you're not sure if your feet are in the right place, you can always put them further away. Thank you. If you can adjust the camera so I can see you guys, I can tell you if you're doing it totally wrong. But if you already know, Nola, no big deal. Perfect, great. And just take a couple breaths and just really just let your day kind of wash over you a little bit. Maybe you've been working like crazy till right this moment. Maybe exactly the opposite. You've been wondering what to do with yourself all day. However it's been, just allow your next couple of breaths just to notice it and witness it. So we're doing a yin yoga class today. And with every posture we come into, we want to come into the postures mindfully. So the first task that we have is to find the right shape for our body. And you all have done it already. Unfortunately, Akiko, your screen is frozen, so I can't tell you, but I'm pretty sure you're doing it right. Got feelings. And then once you've found this shape, and any yin pose, the next step is on purpose. See how much of your body you can allow to soften and relax and to become still here. And then the third thing to check out is after you've found the right shape and after you've softened your body, find that place inside of yourself where you can commit to staying. And on some days, even a 5-minute commitment feels hard and challenging. But we want to practice staying through being uncomfortable, being annoyed or irritated. But we're not trying to practice staying through sharp pain. With your next inhale, roll up and you're going to sweep nothing. You're just going to come back, bring your hands back behind you, put your feet on the ground and doing a little counter pose. So a yang moment, lift up your hips all the way up into tabletop. Let your head drop back. Then look at your third eye, stick out your tongue all the way down your chin, and with a whisper, roar like a big lion. 2 more times. Squeeze your butt, lift your hips higher, push the ground away, and 1 more time. And then allow your line to come back down to the ground. Gently wipe off your chin, unless you're graced with a nice hairy chin. And then bring your left leg, your left foot behind you. So we're coming into deer pose. So your right heel is in front of your groin still. Your left heel is next to your left hip. As always, if you need help to be over your hips, you can elevate your hips by sitting on a block or a stack of books. And if you're bendy, the way to make this a more interesting pose is to move your feet away from the center line. If you're not bendy, the way to try to get more room in the pose is to pull your heels as close as you can to your center line. Now inhale, lift up tall. And with your exhale, bring your left hand to the outside of your right knee and bring your right hand back behind you to keep you upright. Inhale, get tall, and exhale, twist. And then we soften even here. So even though we've used quite a bit of yang to get in the pose, you want to stay in the posture and soften into the posture. So often when we're challenged, we get rigid and constricted and tight. And here we want to practice on purpose, continuing to soften. So today we're doing a spleen and stomach yin series. The stomach is the yang organ, and the spleen is the yin organ. In German, I believe spleen is Milz, something like that.
Milz.
Like we're pretty clear about where our stomach is. Our spleen is actually kind of right above it, and it's quite small. And it's one of the few organs that you can remove from the body and keep living. My buddy Rudolf Steiner says this is proof that therefore there must be a spiritual component of the organ, else we wouldn't be able to lose it and survive. I really like the rationale. But actually, or not actually, but again and again, from so many different sources now in quantum physics, we learn that it's always the energy that comes first. Whether it's a thought or an impulse, and then the physical manifests around that. Material and substance is the result of a path, not the beginning. Take another full inhale, maybe with your exhale, twist a little deeper. And then inhale, come back to center and just turn a little bit to your left and give a little bow to your left-hand side. And then straighten back up. And you're gonna maybe just stretch your left leg straight back, or maybe you need to wiggle around a little bit more. But we're moving into swan pose. And the first part of the posture, we're actually gonna stay lifted here. So again, if you need to use something underneath your buttocks, you can on your right hip. And for this, we're going to start the posture staying lifted in our chest. And often we just skip this part and go straight down. So feel the squeeze into your left kidney, perhaps, your left lower back. Using your hands to keep you upright. You can always use a pillow, a block, or something underneath the buttocks. The other really nice assist, here, I'll show you this way. If your butt's way up here, you can actually bend your left knee and slide onto your butt that way. And that way you get a little bit more freedom. So I'll show you the other way again. So you're up on your hips lifted. And if I just take my knee out to the side there, then I can actually come into the pose deeper, and you still get all the magical benefits of the pose. You lose nothing, everything to gain. Yeah, you got it, Bea. Does that feel a little better? Good. So while we have our chest lifted, let's just make a couple faces. So just make some silent or not silent, you can do whatever you want, wows. So let your whole face be over excited and go, wow, wow, wow. Like you just saw the biggest, most amazing thing. Wow, wow. And maybe you need a little woohoo. Beautiful. See, being still and peaceful in your body and joyfully excited. See, we are complex and powerful. Now, take your chin and just roll your chin to your right shoulder and then lift your chin up. And then like you're kissing the clouds, good afternoon, just pucker your lips. Pusta. Mwah. Beautiful. Like you're trying to show off your bee stung lips. Baby. And then slide your chin back to center and take your chin to your left shoulder and lift up your chin and purse your lips. So you make your lips into a little purse. Puta. Oh, pusta, that's blow. I meant puta. I know, you don't think it's yoga. It really is yoga, Kiko. I promise. I'm not just making you do weird things. All right, beautiful. And then come back to center and then joyfully lift your gaze. You might have to close your eyes, especially if you're outside, and kiss the heavens good afternoon. Take another full inhale, lift your chest up, and then with your exhale, start to walk your hands forward, lying your chest down to the ground. Settle into the posture, make friends with it. So sometimes if you're at home, maybe having a block for your head or books. Nice yoga block in Berlin there, outside of Berlin. Or maybe even having a pillow that you lie on. But even just stacking your forearms allows you to have your neck in a neutral position. So in traditional Chinese medicine, when we are looking at the spleen and the stomach as an organ pair, the themes that we are working with have a lot to do with how we take the outside world and become ourselves. So when does a carrot actually become me after I've eaten it? Like this is the very physical elements of it. But then you can think metaphorically, how do we take the outside world and our experience in the world and integrate it into our beingness? It's quite interesting. Scientists still are a little vague actually when that physically happens with food. We take it into our mouth, we chew it, and then swallow it, and it's broken down further and further. And then at one point, it transforms. So you've let go of the waste, and the food you've eaten has becomes you. And whether you're an omnivore or vegan or plantarian, our eating process is always, it's kind of obvious. You're breaking something down. You're killing it. It's a death process. And one of the measures of healthy food is actually how living is the food that you're eating. How much life is in the food that you eat. So we can take some really, extreme, you okay there? Extreme examples. You have these, I had to pause for a moment to see if I actually ever tasted one. I think I probably have. But you have these amazing things called Twinkie bars in the US. And some postulate that like after a nuclear attack, the Twinkie bars would be the only thing that was actually undamaged, probably along with like the McDonald's cheeseburger. And you put that next to like a head of lettuce. You can immediately tell that one of them has more life in it and one of them doesn't. And so what we receive from eating, we even call it a head of lettuce. We don't get a leg of cucumber. We do get a head of lettuce. But we can tell that if we're eating it, we're going to get some life forces from this lettuce. And in the Twinkie, unfortunately, all we get is the stuff. Notice as we stay in this pose, it gets more intense, more sensations. So maybe witness them, notice them. Breathe them in, and with your exhale, imagine what you want to feel. Inhale, take in the challenge, and with your exhale, breathe out the solution or the gifts. And then start to walk your hands back. And bring your hands underneath your shoulders and just step back into plank. Oh, yes, I said that. So you can make it a downward facing dog if you need to. But come into an active pose for a moment, even though your leg feels like it doesn't want to, but you're in charge. So wiggle a couple times, maybe shift to the tips of your toes and back, pushing your heels backwards and forwards. And then slowly lower all the way down to the mat. And then slide your elbows in front of your shoulders and lift up into Sphinx. And if you have a very spacious body, you might even notice that in the afternoons, we have more flexibility than in the mornings. You can also do seal here, extending your arms. And there's also nice variation between seal and Sphinx where you just put something underneath your forearms. Take your legs out as wide as is comfortable for you. If you have a sensitive lower back, you want your legs closer together. And if you feel like too much sensation in your lower back, usually about like 4 minutes into the pose, you can try engaging your thigh muscles first and then releasing them a couple of times. And it might take away kind of the pinching in your lower back so you can stay in the pose. But if it doesn't go away, there's no contest here. We got nothing to prove. So in your yin practice, it's totally fine to be annoyed, to be irritated, bored. But you don't want to be experiencing, you don't want to feel like you're being like electrocuted, like not cool. So on this one hand, with our food, we see that the more living qualities we have in food, the more actually we are gifted from our food so that we have energy to do whatever good work we're doing in the world. So what we start to notice when you start studying diets and food cultures, we start to notice that the more living your food is, the more energy you get from it, the healthier it is for your body. And from these kind of studies, there's actually been a plethora of work done in actually noticing and investigating how many different bacteria we actually need in our body to take in the outside world, transform it into energy for ourselves so that we can live. So there's what we refer to as our natural flora. And if we don't have a healthy bacteria culture in our guts, it makes it much harder for us to actually receive the nutrients from the food that we eat. I remember when I was studying in college and I was studying microbiology, which is essentially the study of bacteria. And it was amazing because there was really a bacteria for everything. Like all sorts of anomalies can be found in bacteria. Like for instance, there's some bacteria that navigate by the magnetism from the North Pole, just like a compass works. Or, you know, they're now discovered there's actually an algae or a bacteria that actually can eat plastic, a promising development. But really, there's a bacteria for everything. And if we haven't discovered it yet, it's because we haven't looked hard enough. Our, you know, our whole world actually wouldn't function without bacteria. Yet despite this, a lot of us can get really worried about all the bacteria out there and how we ever going to get this place clean enough for us. And it's this odd, like, mental trick in a way. It's like, yeah, back to college. My organic chemistry teacher would say every day nearly, like, the most dangerous thing is just a little bit of education. A little, like, if you know a little bit of chemistry, you're going to blow up things, was his rationale. But if all we know about bacteria is to be scared of them and try and desperately eradicate them, all we're doing is making the superbugs. And then slowly lower down to the ground. I didn't forget about you. Wiggle your hips side to side, moan and groan a couple of times. The stomach and the spleen are ruled by the earth element. So it makes sense that in our gut, we find all these bacteria that we also find in the soil, that we find in the outside world, because we are part of this earth. Now inhale, bring your hands underneath your shoulders, push your hips back to your heels, and then bring yourself to the other side of deer pose. So you're gonna have your left heel in front of your groin, your right heel next to your right buttocks. If you need to elevate your hips to find more freedom so your spine can lift upright, do so. If you want to make it more challenging, move your heels further away from your midline. If you want to make it easier, pull your heels close to your midline. Yeah, that's good. Now inhale, get tall. And with your exhale, twist to your left, draping your right hand over your left knee, allowing your left hand behind you to help you be upright here. So I use this example of the bacteria as a little kind of reminder. Because, you know, if I'm talking about food and I'm going, oh yeah, it's a killing process. It's true, but it's not a process you need to be sad about. You know, you can live off of cat food and still be enlightened. That's true. Thank you, babe. You can live off of so many things. You can even, you know, there are people who have survived because of that Twinkie. But we have this really kind of bad habit, I feel right now, of looking out in the world and seeing so much chaos and so much hardship and struggle, as well as illness and sicknesses. That it's really hard to remember that that whole outside world is actually part of us. And so when we kind of lift ourselves up from not just looking at the food and how we take it into our body, but what else actually feeds us? What nourishes our emotions? What feeds our intellect? What inspires us spiritually? And how much of that do we take as much care at choosing as right now it's pretty trendy and hip to care so much about what you're eating? What ideas have you ingested that are just really not sitting well? Or like a food that we're allergic to, you can't get rid of? You'll start to notice that there are ideas and artworks or stories and literature that actually inspire you and fill you up with life. And then there's other stuff that just pulls and weighs down on you. And actually, you can notice you lose energy from taking it in. And then unwind to center on your inhale. And then with your next exhale, just bow to the right hand side. Let your head dip down. And then inhale up and stretch your right leg behind you. First, staying lifted in our swan, making the adjustments as necessary. So either putting something underneath your left buttocks or bending your right knee and allowing your right hip to open so you can relax onto your buttocks. And stay lifted here for a while, actually welcoming the warming pinch into your right kidney. So we have a world right now that is volatile. I think maybe that's the best description. And this isn't anything new. Like there's no new problems really that have like come up. But we are in a time of that which has been covered or secret or ignored is being revealed in ways that hopefully we can't claim ignorance anymore. Start to walk your hands out. Soften into the pose. Find that sweet spot right in between too much and too little. So with our stomach and spleen, it's kind of this these organs of obviously of ingestion, of taking food in, of taking the world in. And then transforming the world into ourselves so that we can be of service. And with food, it's pretty direct, you know. If you're like handed a bowl full of moldy rice and you're not starving, like that's going to be gross and you're not going to want to put it in your mouth and swallow it and eat it. In our eating, we have such interesting things revealed. So there's one layer of like, what are we privileged enough to have access to? What are we privileged enough to have grown up with as a standard? One of my dearest friends, she grew up, she says it, I would say it too, I guess. But yeah, she grew up totally white trash, very poor, still very white. Um, and her mother had her when her mother was 17, and she describes her upbringing really as a child taking care of her. She's done a lot of work, and so she can tell it as a beautiful story, but it's a harrowing story nonetheless. But she grew up, and all of her childhood, her mom had to force her to eat vegetables. Now I really want to do the air sign quotes, vegetables, because all that she ever got as a kid were canned vegetables. I know it's true, Lyra. I couldn't believe it myself. But for me, who, I was born in a farm and I've grown up with like, kind of hippie, crunchy parents since we've had really, like, really full, healthy food as a child. So that's my go-to. That's my comfort food. But my friend Chris, she didn't have fresh vegetables till she was an adult. And so her comfort food goes nowhere near vegetables because for all of us, we want to what one of the things that we do with food is comfort ourselves or care for ourselves. And so especially in times of stress, anxiety, or sadness, we often will turn to the foods that were comfort food to us when we were kids. So we already have this kind of link to our own heritage through food. Paris getting louder. Just a couple more breaths. Welcome the intensity. So even though most of us are kind of, adults and can make choices around food independently, it's not actually ever really independent. It depends on where you live, it depends on your economy, it depends what you grew up with. It depends on a lot of things because you can't take us out of our cultural heritage. You can't take us out of our family history. And you can't even take us out of our own just preferences. But I imagine you might prefer to start coming out of the pose. So let's try that out. Walk your hands back to your chest and then see if you can move your legs and maybe move into downward facing dog just to get a little wiggle going in your body. And actually, the movement will help the sensation move through your body. And then you're going to drop your knees down to the ground. And just to make sure if your toes aren't asleep yet, maybe they will be after the next pose. You're going to tuck your toes under and sit on your heels. Now, this is, again, there's a big range between all of us, how this feels. So I can just sit here for like probably another 20 minutes and like, yam, 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 and just have my toes like that. And yes, I'll feel it after I come out of it, but it's not a big deal. For other people, especially if you've been really athletic in your life or very male in your life, it's a tighter situation. So if you have to come out before I give you permission, don't sweat it. So we're just going to sit here for a couple moments. This is one of the ways that we actually stimulate all of our meridians that start or end in our feet. which includes the spleen and stomach meridian. Maybe you want to close your eyes, maybe you don't. But see, again, if even in this pose that's quite dramatic, can you come into it with a yin sensibility? So I'm not sure what part of the world right now is hardest for you. But I find myself always really challenged with the ignorant racism that I can see in a lot of us. You know, just being white and privileged and growing up that way, we naturally often will have kind of a blindness, and we can do work and we can see a little bit more, and there's usually just a little bit more to see. But what's so hard is seeing people who want to get out of this situation of being in a world that is still really unfair to most of our population. How are your toes doing there? They getting a little warm? What we're seeing emerge in the world, all over the world, is this rising up of situations that we've known are bad and have known are bad for some time, and haven't, as societies, as cultures, as the organism of humanity, we haven't done anything about these situations. All right, let's change this one at least. Come forward, slap out your feet, and then rock back, stretching your ankles. And then slide forward onto your left-hand side. Bring your left hand underneath your ear, starting off in beach asana. So just as if you were hanging out at a beach. Perfect pair. Yeah. You got it. Hey, how you doing? Okay, stretch your top leg straight out of your hip. Now, if you're not flexible enough to have your top leg come straight and still line up your foot with your hip, then you can bend your knee and just make sure you line up your knee with your hip. You're fine there. How would it look? It would look like this. Very nice. Now reach behind you with your right hand and hold on to your left foot, pulling your left foot towards the buttocks. What you want to feel is a nice stretch in the belly of your thigh. Now, if you're a little bit flexible or you have a little bit more space in the twist here, you can allow your shoulders to come down to the ground. Make friends with the posture, make it your own. Take a full breath in with your exhale, just sigh out. Now, one of the hallmarks of our time is that throughout the last 60 years about, people have been on all sorts of spiritual journeys, journeys of self-discovery. And one vital step, whether you receive the teaching. There's so many different places that you get this teaching, it doesn't really matter. Um, but this idea of like when you get really mad or really triggered by something, it's because you do the same thing. So if I get really mad at someone not doing what they said, the kind of Brene Brown logic is that therefore you also don't do what you say all the time, which is totally true. We're not there yet, right? So start to notice what are the things in the world right now that trigger you, that evoke an emotional response to you, even if it's not directly in your home or your town, or like what world events do you feel most connected to or most reactive towards? It's just a really useful thing to notice because it points to kind of our connection actually to the rest of the world. And it's on one hand really easy to feel completely separated and out of touch. But when we notice how events in the wide world affect us emotionally, affect us inwardly, we are noticing a connection. We're noticing a thread that lives between us and 7 billion strangers. Now roll out of the pose to roll into the other side. Moaning and groaning as you move can help the sensations in your body travel through you. Resting your head on your right hand, stretch your left leg straight out from your hip. If you need to, you can bend your left knee. So just lining up your knee and hip. And then reach back and hold on to your lower foot. How lovely it is that we want to feel the belly of the thigh to know that we're stimulating actually the stomach meridian that goes straight through the middle of our leg here. Maybe you have enough space to lay your shoulders down. Take a full inhale with your exhale, just sigh out. We may not notice yet that everything we do has a cosmic consequence. And it's not because you're special, it's because you're specially ordinary. It's not because we're unique, it's because we're human, because we are connected. So when you feel that you're struggling to ingest some of the hardships in this world, Be brave and breathe them in like the transformer you are. Breathe in these stories of injustices and crime, violence, and small mindedness. Breathe them in and breathe out what you want to see more of the world in the world. Breathe out how can we be to be better, to be different, to change the story. Whether you pray or you meditate or you just practice, do it wholeheartedly because you need it more than ever. Every time you are kind to a living being has consequences. Every thought that you think and every action you take. They're not going to write a news story about how that meditation prevented that hardship because we can't report on news that didn't happen because we are a society of the past here. But every time you lift someone up and empower them, you lose nothing. So rather than trying not to take in what's happening in the world, breathe it in, digest it. There's so much life in it, so much fire. And breathe out what you want to see. What do you want to be a part of? And then unwind, roll out of the pose, and find your way into Shavasana. Letting your legs be as wide as the yoga mat, like you're about to make a snow or a sand angel. Your arms a little bit away from your body. You can cover yourself with a with whatever you want. But I was thinking like a blanket or a sweatshirt or something. Close your eyes. Let your palms be open. With your next inhale, invite your breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes, your face and your nose. And then just roll on to your side, hugging your knees to your chest, and feel the vibrancy in your body, this vitality and life force. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. And then allow your hands to meet at heart center. Feel the ground below you so you can lift up tall. And let's close this class with one Om. Empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Ah. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward together, we say, Namaste. And so much love. Now make some noise.